Some people believe that these were Sarah's methods for dealing with unfriendly ghosts, baffling the spirits. We don't really know.
The mystery behind the Winchester house has kept people guessing for years. But what if the real story is nothing like the ghost tales we've heard? Behind its strange rooms and endless hallways lies a heartbreaking truth about Sarah Winchester, a secret filled with sorrow, strength, and mystery. Join us as we reveal the part of the story no one talks about, the mystery behind the mansion. Many stories have been shared over the years about a woman named Sarah, the wife of William Winchester, the man behind the famous Winchester Repeating Arms Company. According to the tale often passed down, Sarah's life was marked by one heartbreaking event after another. She lost several loved ones, and by the time her husband passed away in 1881, her world was already filled with sorrow. Not long after becoming a widow, she reportedly met a psychic who claimed that Sarah was being followed by the spirits of all those who had passed because of the rifles her husband's company had produced. The medium gave her a strange piece of advice. She needed to keep building a house, one that never stopped growing, so that these restless souls would get confused and never be able to catch her. With the large inheritance she received after her husband's death, along with shares in his company, Sarah packed up her things and moved west, settling in San Jose, California. There, she bought a modest farmhouse which would soon become one of the most bizarre homes in the country. She hired a full team of carpenters who worked day and night, adding more and more rooms, twisting hallways, and peculiar structures that didn't seem to make sense. Some staircases led to ceilings. Some doors opened into brick walls or to drops that went nowhere. Windows were placed in the middle of rooms or facing walls. The house slowly turned into a confusing maze, and the work never really stopped, not even for a day. People say that while the workers hammered and built, Sarah would slip away into a secret room where she would try to speak to the spirits, asking them to leave her alone. For nearly 4 decades, this odd construction continued, and Sarah never seemed to lose interest in keeping the ghosts away. It wasn't until she passed away in 1922 that the hammering finally went silent. After she passed, the house didn't go to just anyone. Her niece inherited all of her personal belongings, while the house itself was sold at auction. Eventually, it opened to the public and became the world-famous attraction that still draws thousands of curious visitors today. That's the story most people know, but is it really what happened? Thanks to modern research and access to historical records, experts have been able to uncover a more complete and perhaps even more fascinating version of Sarah's life, one that paints her not just as a grieving widow haunted by ghosts, but as a complex and intelligent woman shaped by deep loss and a lifelong love of architecture. Now, for a better understanding, let's see who she was before the haunted widow rumors went round. Shaped by tragedy and loss. As a child, Sarah's father worked as a carpenter, and it was from him that she developed a love for design and buildings. Growing up, she became close with a boy named William Wirt Winchester, whose family lived nearby. Their families had a strong connection, and that friendship eventually led to marriage in 1862. However, happiness didn't stay long. Shortly after they got married, William's sister passed away during childbirth, and the newborn baby also didn't survive. This was only the beginning of a series of losses that would shape their lives. Sarah herself had already experienced the pain of losing a sibling when one of her sisters passed as a child. Death became something that touched them again and again. In 1866, Sarah gave birth to her first child, a baby girl she lovingly named Annie, in honor of William's late sister. But tragedy struck once again. The baby had a condition called marasmus, which made it hard for her body to absorb nutrients. Despite Sarah's efforts, the little girl couldn't feed properly and also passed away from starvation within a month. The loss crushed both Sarah and William. They withdrew from society, choosing instead to focus on something they both found comfort in, which was designing and building. In 1869, they completed a home on Prospect Hill, hoping it might help ease their sorrow. That same year, Sarah's father also passed away, leaving another space in her heart that could never be filled. A decade later, Sarah entered what would be one of the most heartbreaking chapters of her life. Within a short span of 10 months, more loss would fall upon her, losses that would steer her future in an unexpected direction. In the spring of 1880, another wave of sorrow swept through Sarah's life. Her mother passed away in May, and by December that same year, her father-in-law followed. Then came the biggest blow of all. In March 1881, her beloved husband William lost his life to tuberculosis. Losing him shattered her heart completely. Sarah had adored William deeply, and his absence left a silence she couldn't fill. Now widowed, she was left to face the world alone. William's passing did leave her with a large inheritance, around $20 million at that time, as well as half ownership of his booming rifle business. Financially, she was secure, but emotionally, she was drowning. Many days she would wander to the shoreline, gazing out into the endless ocean, letting the wind carry her grief while she searched for peace that never quite came. By 1884, Sarah's health had started to decline. She was battling rheumatoid arthritis, and the pain was growing unbearable. Her doctor advised her to move somewhere warmer and drier, and California quickly became the top recommendation. That same year, another wound was added to her already heavy heart. Her older sister, Mary Converse, passed away too. Sarah knew she needed a fresh start, not just to ease her aching joints, but to help calm her troubled spirit. And it was at this process that she found something incredible: building the house and the rumors surrounding it. As time went by, Sarah remembered visiting San Francisco with William during happier times, and those memories led her to search for a home nearby. Eventually, she discovered a big farmhouse sitting on a peaceful 45-acre property along Santa Clara Los Gatos Road. The moment she saw it, she knew it was the place she needed. She bought the estate in 1886. Soon after, she brought in a foreman and hired a team of full-time workers, craftsmen from different backgrounds and cultures, who would help shape the home into something much greater than it originally was. At first, she brought in professional architects to redesign the house, but their ideas never felt quite right to her. So she made a bold decision. She would take the lead herself. Designing became her personal therapy. Whenever sadness crept in or her body hurt too much, she would return to her blueprints and sketches. Her love for building gave her something to focus on, something that made her feel alive again. Over time, her illness affected her appearance and movement, and she began to withdraw from the outside world. But inside her home, she found connection with the people who worked beside her. Her staff, from servants to carpenters, became her close companions. She was kind to them, paid them generously, and shared a special kind of friendship with them that wasn't common between employer and worker in those days. They all shared a love for creativity and construction, and that made them feel like a team. Sarah named her new home Lanada Villa, inspired by the peaceful rolling landscape around it. It reminded her of a place in Spain called Lanada Alavesa, a region she and William had once explored together. Though she no longer had her husband, she wasn't completely alone. She managed to convince her two sisters, Isabel and Estelle, to come to San Jose with their children and be close to her. From that moment on, Sarah took it upon herself to care for her family. She never had children of her own, so her sisters and their kids meant the world to her. She supported them not just financially, but emotionally too. Estelle, one of her sisters, had a rough time. Her marriage collapsed and she eventually lost her battle with addiction. Sarah was heartbroken by this. Isabel, the other sister, decided to move out of the Winchester estate and into her own house nearby. Sarah helped her renovate the place, making sure she was comfortable and taken care of. The only family member who stayed with Sarah permanently in the mansion was her niece, Daisy. Together, they shared the massive home that continued to grow in size, with more space than she could ever need, and a fortune that gave her the freedom to do whatever she pleased. Sarah dove deeper into her passion for architecture. The house began to evolve more dramatically. She added a third story, then a fourth, and even a fifth. Her designs became bolder. She started visiting different architectural fairs and garden exhibits, soaking up inspiration and discovering new building ideas. Each visit gave her fresh concepts to experiment with. She was no longer just building a home. She was creating a living work of art that carried her grief, her memories, and her love all within its walls. The home Sarah built followed a design style known as Queen Anne Revival, but what she created was far from ordinary. Unlike most houses of that era, hers didn't follow a strict plan or finish line. Since the house was more of a personal passion project than a formal construction, Sarah chose not to work from any grand blueprint. Instead, she allowed herself the freedom to build it piece by piece, room after room and hallway after hallway, changing direction whenever she felt inspired to try something new. Even if a space was already halfway done or fully finished, it didn't matter. If a fresh idea came to her, she would have her team tear down the existing structure and begin again from scratch. It wasn't about speed or logic. It was about creativity, healing, and control over something in a world that had taken so much from her. But it wasn't always non-stop construction. There were times when Sarah gave her workers extended breaks. sometimes pausing all activity on the house for months at a time. Then just as suddenly, she would call them back. Her builders returned, ready to pick up where they left off, excited to continue the work and eager to begin something new. This start-and-stop rhythm helped shape the house into the strange, wandering masterpiece that it became. That's part of why the layout feels so unusual. Some hallways twist and turn without direction. Certain features just don't make sense at first glance. For instance, a skylight might be seen between two levels simply because a roof used to sit beneath it but was later removed. A hallway with a step up followed immediately by a step down might mean you've just stepped into a part of the house that was built on uneven ground. A window that faces a wall rather than a garden or the sky. That could mean another part of the home was added where an open view once existed. Then there were other changes that reflected Sarah's own aging body. As her arthritis became worse, climbing stairs was no longer easy. To make moving around less painful, she had special staircases built, ones that rose slowly with short, shallow steps. These new stairways had to stretch longer and turn more than usual, just to reach the next floor gently enough for her to walk without suffering. By the time the 1890s rolled around, the house had grown so big that it became impossible to ignore. It loomed over the land with strange shapes and endless additions. People living nearby couldn't help but wonder what the lonely widow was doing inside that growing structure. Whispers filled the town and curiosity gave way to wild rumors. Since Sarah barely ever came out or spoke with anyone, the silence only fueled the stories, and there was a lot to talk about. The most noticeable feature, the tall central tower, was said to have been rebuilt not once or twice, but 16 times before Sarah finally approved its design. Locals were convinced there was more going on than just a love for architecture. A newspaper article published in March of 1895 by the San Jose Daily News shared one of the popular beliefs at the time, that the woman who owned the grand home believed she would pass away the moment the house was ever truly finished. People claimed that this fear had driven her to build without end, creating a strange collection of domes, balconies, twisting towers, and rising rooftops that sprawled across the land like a castle built from dreams, and maybe even a few nightmares. 2 years after a local newspaper ran a story claiming Sarah believed she would pass away if her home was ever finished, someone close to the Winchester family came forward to deny the tale. But by then it was too late. The myth had already spread like wildfire, and people were convinced that Sarah was a grieving woman who had lost her mind. The gossip stuck, and Sarah never tried to correct it. She didn't send any letters to defend her name or speak to reporters. Her focus wasn't on her reputation. It was on the people she cared about and the home she had poured her heart into building. After everything she had been through, Sarah didn't have the energy to worry about society's judgment. As she grew older, she seemed less and less interested in the opinions of strangers. Rumors even claimed that she had twice ignored visits from a sitting U.S. president, leaving the front gates locked when he came. That only made the stories worse, with some saying she thought herself too important to meet with even the president. While the newspapers wrote disapproving headlines and whispered insults, Sarah stayed quiet and carried on living in the way that brought her peace. By the time 20 years of constant construction had passed, the house, though large and winding, had become something extraordinary. Despite the endless changes and odd layouts, Sarah was proud of what she'd created. The mansion had become her safe space, her project of love and healing. Then, in the early hours of April 18, 1906, everything changed. And this particular incident added more suspicions to the already growing rumors: the earthquake and its effects. An enormous earthquake shook the land across Northern California. It measured a massive 7.9 in strength and caused devastating damage, destroying buildings and setting fires that burned entire neighborhoods to the ground. Sarah's beloved home was hit hard. Walls crumbled, the tallest central tower collapsed, and large portions of the house were reduced to splintered wood and fallen beams. The 4th and 5th floors were nearly wiped out. Inside, walls cracked wide open, and in some rooms, entire layers of plaster peeled away, leaving just the bare bones of the structure. Most of the chimneys toppled too, and instead of rebuilding them, workers simply sealed them shut, rendering many fireplaces completely useless. Thankfully, no one in Sarah's family was hurt, and it's believed she wasn't even in the house when the quake struck. But when she returned to see the damage with her own eyes, she was heartbroken. Her house, the one she had spent decades building and pouring her soul into, was broken just like she was. The pain she felt in that moment couldn't be put into words. She thought about tearing the whole place down and starting from scratch, but by then she was already 67 years old. Her body was tired. Her spirit was too. So instead of rebuilding the broken sections, she chose a simpler path. She asked her workers to patch up the damaged areas and seal off whatever couldn't be saved. She didn't try to restore it back to how it once was. And that decision helped create even more of the home's strange layout. Doors that open to sudden drops, staircases that stop at walls, and windows that now face nothing at all. Some of these features once had purpose. A staircase might have led to a room, a doorway may have once opened to a balcony, and windows once looked out over open land. But after the earthquake, Sarah decided to wall those sections off, leaving the broken pieces hidden behind plain boards. After that disaster, she never built anything new on the property again. The joy of adding to her house had faded. Maybe she feared another quake would come and destroy what little she had left. The only thing she ever added again was a small elevator in 1916, built because her joints could no longer handle even the gentle steps she had once designed for herself. But even as her body weakened, the rumors about her only grew louder. It must have hurt deeply to hear the world around her continue to make fun of her, even after everything she had endured. Hoping to protect what peace she had left, Sarah told her workers to plant tall hedges around the home, hiding it from public view. She chose solitude, pulling away from the world outside. And while some may see that as a sad ending, it wasn't the whole story. Sarah wasn't just a widow hiding from the world. She was a woman who had faced loss after loss, and still found a way to build something lasting, something full of imagination, emotion, and quiet strength. But not everything about Sarah Winchester's story was filled with sorrow. What most people don't know is that both before and after the earthquake, she secured many smart investments in real estate all around the Bay Area. Now, let's explore more about it. A life of quiet power and hidden purpose. Beyond her famous home in San Jose, she actually owned at least 7 other properties. One of them was a charming house in Los Altos, just a short drive about 7 miles from the mansion. She also owned 3 homes in Atherton, one of which she bought in 1907 and made her main residence. That house had a more modern look with a craftsman-style design, reflecting her growing interest in newer architecture. While living in Atherton, she didn't stop expanding her property interests. She bought a huge stretch of land in Burlingame, right beside the city, and it covered everything east of California Drive from Broadway down to Oak Grove Avenue. Sarah had big dreams for that land. She imagined turning it into a beautiful line of coastal homes where travelers could relax and enjoy the California sunshine. To make this idea work, she even had her team dig a canal and build a small harbor, hoping to boost the value by giving it waterfront access. And she didn't stop there. She had a massive houseboat towed into the newly made harbor, where she would sometimes go to unwind. The houseboat even had davits installed, which are swinging metal arms made to hold lifeboats, proof that the vessel was more than just for show. Sadly, years after her death, the houseboat was destroyed in a fire, and though she dreamed of seeing her grand vision for the coastal retreat completed, she passed away before that dream became real. Today, that land has become part of the local suburbs, quietly holding the memory of what could have been. Behind the scenes, Sarah was doing something even more beautiful, something she kept entirely to herself. She was quietly giving back. She made generous donations to many people and causes, including those who had lost their homes during the terrible San Francisco earthquake. But she never wanted recognition. In fact, she specifically asked that her name never be mentioned in connection to any of her gifts. Because of that, the full scale of her kindness may never be known. But one thing is certain, she was deeply generous, and her compassion ran deeper than the public ever realized. Now this shows us that beyond the rumors and myths, she was a woman of strong values and gentle heart. She believed in women's rights and was a supporter of the suffrage movement. She also cared about animals and stood up for their protection. From what we know, she was likely a devoted vegetarian, choosing not to harm animals, even through her meals. However, Sarah Winchester wasn't just the mourning widow in a black dress that the world whispered about. She was much more. She was thoughtful, curious, kind, and incredibly passionate. Her story isn't just about grief. It's also about resilience, quiet strength, and a woman who found ways to turn pain into purpose, deteriorating health, death, and legacy. By 1903, Sarah Winchester's health had taken a serious downturn. Her struggle with rheumatoid arthritis had worsened, twisting her hands and feet so badly that walking became difficult. and writing was nearly impossible. She began to lose her teeth and had to rely on dentures. Even simple tasks like holding a pen caused her pain, so she needed help from her loyal niece, Daisy, and a stenographer to get her thoughts down on paper. In 1911, there was a small improvement in her health, enough for her to return to sewing, a hobby she enjoyed. But newspapers at the time still claimed she was close to death. That same year, she hired Henrietta Severa to serve as both her nurse and secretary. Henrietta quickly became a trusted part of Sarah's life and stayed by her side until the very end. By 1920, Sarah barely left her home. She no longer went shopping herself and instead ordered clothes and fabric through the mail or had store employees bring items out to her car. Though physically fragile, she still found creative ways to live with independence and dignity. Through it all, Sarah remained quietly strong, deeply private, and full of quiet grace in the face of aging and illness. But as time went on, she became more cautious of the possibility of death. In the warm months of 1922, Sarah Winchester, now frail and nearing the end of her life, had to leave her peaceful home in Atherton and return to the sprawling San Jose mansion. The reason was simple. She needed to be closer to her doctor. Her health had worsened, and it was clear her final days were approaching. On September 5th of that year, at the age of 83, Sarah passed away quietly, leaving behind a legacy as mysterious as the house she had spent decades shaping. When her will was opened, it was clear how much she had cared for the people closest to her. She carefully divided what was left of her wealth and property between her family members, trusted workers, and loyal foremen. Her beloved niece Daisy, who had stayed by her side all those years, inherited the Atherton home along with everything inside all of Sarah's other houses. But there was one firm condition. If anyone dared to challenge her will, they would be left with nothing at all. Over time, many of Sarah's properties were sold off and repurposed. Strangely enough, the massive San Jose estate, the house she had spent most of her life building, was considered to have little worth. The building was still badly damaged from the 1906 earthquake, and nearly all her personal belongings had already been taken out. The layout was so strange and disjointed that turning it into a normal, livable home would have cost more than most people were willing to spend. In fact, the land beneath the house was valued more than the home itself. Just 9 months after Sarah's passing, a man named John Brown decided to rent the property. He and his wife began inviting curious visitors inside for guided tours. To make the house's odd structure more understandable, they shared all the stories and legends that had been whispered about Sarah for decades. The tales of ghostly warnings, spiritual instructions, and rooms built to confuse the dead became the heart of the tour experience. Eventually, in 1931, John Brown bought the house outright, and his family still manages it today as a successful attraction that draws visitors from all over the world. The house is now lovingly preserved, with much of it still reflecting how it looked the day Sarah passed away. Since many rooms were completely empty by the time tours began, antique furniture was brought in to restore a sense of the past. Over time, the original 45-acre estate was slowly sold and developed until only 5 acres remained, just enough to hold the grand 24,000-square-foot mansion. The view today is nothing like it once was. Instead of wide open land and gardens, the house now sits beneath a sky crowded by dull modern buildings. They tower above the old home, gray and lifeless, while the mansion remains full of strange charm and stubborn beauty. It's hard to believe that the house began as an 8-bedroom farmhouse when Sarah first bought it in 1886. By the time of her death, it had become something almost unbelievable. 160 rooms, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 47 fireplaces, 17 chimneys, 40 staircases, 40 bedrooms, 2 grand ballrooms, 13 bathrooms, 6 kitchens, 3 elevators, and 2 basements. Much of the mansion was crafted from redwood, which not only gave it its unique look, but also explains how it's remained so solid and strong after all these years. After the earthquake, Sarah once looked at her damaged home and remarked that it looked like it had been designed by someone out of their mind. That comment alone says so much about her spirit, gentle, witty, and self-awareness. Today, when visitors walk through the strange halls and winding rooms, tour guides often share the famous tale of a psychic medium telling Sarah to build the house in order to confuse spirits of those eliminated by her husband's rifles. Whether that psychic truly existed or not, no one can say for certain. There's no written proof, and no clear evidence that Sarah ever held seances. But even if she had, it wouldn't have been surprising. Many people during the Victorian era were fascinated by the spirit world, and regularly hosted such gatherings. So, is the house haunted? That depends on who you ask. Some believe it is, while others think it's just a grand home with a very unusual design. But honestly, the ghost stories aren't what stand out most. What really matters is the truth, the real story of a woman who is quiet, thoughtful, and full of heart. Sarah Winchester was far more than just the mysterious widow in black. She was a woman who carried the weight of sorrow with grace, who gave generously without asking for attention, and who built something truly unforgettable, not for fame or fear, but out of passion, pain, and love. So what do you think about the Winchester's mansion? Do you still think it was haunted? Let's hear from you in the comments. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.